You've just seen some advertising that we love. Ads that make you think, feel, laugh, cry, smile, act, and of course, buy. Ads that drive growth for the brands and the categories in which they compete. Ads that are a force for good by expressing points of view on issues that matter and where the brand matters. And ads that clear the highest bar for creative brilliance. These are the types of ads that we want for P&G's 65 brands. Ads that reach nearly 5 billion consumers, that support directly or indirectly more than 100,000 jobs in 180 countries around the world. Jobs for men and women in factories, offices, distribution centers, agencies, suppliers, and retail stores. You see, for P&G, creativity isn't simply a nice to have, it's a must have. Part of our commitment to make the lives of people better every single day. Now, the companies in this room have enabled this kind of creativity through digital technology, search, social, video, chat, snaps, pins, cinemagraphs, machine learning, AI, and virtual reality is just now starting to take off. Before digital technology, we were constrained, limited formats, change at a snail's pace. Now we have freedom to spread our wings, to venture where no creative has been before at lightning speed. And the result can be magnificent works of craft. But there's a dark side. At the same time, we've seen an exponential increase in, well, crap. Craft or crap? That's really the big question. And technology enables both. And all too often, the outcome has been crappy advertising, accompanied by even crappier viewing experiences. I mean, let's face it, all of us in this room bombard consumers with thousands of ads a day, subject them to endless ad load times, interrupt them with pop-ups, and overpopulate their screens and feeds with just plain bad work. I mean, is it any wonder that ad blockers are growing 40%? Which really begs another question. How many people are really seeing these ads? We have an antiquated media buying and selling system that is clearly has not been built for this technology revolution. We serve ads to consumers through a non-transparent media supply chain with spotty compliance to common standards, unreliable measurement, hidden rebates, and new inventions like bots and methbot fraud, which all leads to an even bigger problem. We're not growing enough. Despite spending an astounding $200 billion of advertising in the US alone, the growth rates of our collective industries is really pretty anemic. Now, some might say we're squandering this wonderful gift of digital technology. Now, perhaps we could chalk it up to growing pains, since digital advertising is relatively new. After all, we've had TV since the 1950s, and the IAB was only formed in the mid-1990s. But folks, the IAB is going to turn 21 years old in 2017, and that's adulthood by any standard. We've been giving a pass to the new media, all in the spirit of learning, P&G included. But together, we're all spending more than $70 billion in digital advertising, now surpassing TV. The time and the days of giving digital a pass are over. It's time to grow up. It's time for action. So I'll offer a clear call to action today, and I'll request that we all act on it. We need better advertising to drive growth, enabled by media transparency to drive a clean and productive media supply chain. Now, better advertising and media transparency are very closely related. Why is that? Well, because better advertising requires time and money. Yet, we're all wasting way too much time and money on a media supply chain with poor standards adoption. Too many players grading their own homework. Too many hidden touches, and too many holes to allow criminals to rip us off. We have a media supply chain that is murky at best and fraudulent at worst. We need to clean it up and invest the time and money that we save into better advertising to drive growth. It's time we come together, put down our finger pointers, and solve these problems, all of us, marketers, agencies, publishers, ad tech platforms, suppliers, together. Frankly, this is a matter of collective will, because surely, if we can invent technology for driverless cars and virtual reality, we can find a way to track and verify media accurately. As we all know, the problems and the solutions are really not new. Adopt one viewability standard. Implement accredited third-party measurement verification. Get transparent agency contracts. And prevent ad fraud. Yet, for many reasons, we haven't taken enough action to make a difference. Now, maybe one reason is that cleaning up the media supply chain is not really a very sexy topic. I mean, let's face it, it would be a lot more fun if I were up here talking to you about the latest VR experience than bot fraud. But maybe there's another reason. And I'm going to make a confession, which may sound familiar to some of you. I confess that P&G believed the myth that we could be the first mover on all of the latest shiny objects, despite the lack of standards and measurements and verification. We accepted multiple viewability metrics, publisher self-reporting with no verification, outdated agency contracts, and fraud threats with the somewhat delusional thought that digital is different and that we were getting ahead of the digital curve. We've come to our senses. We realize there is no sustainable advantage in a complicated, non-transparent, inefficient, and fraudulent media supply chain. Getting to a clean, productive supply chain is the level playing field that we all want and we all need. The basis for competitive advantage is our brands, our advertising craft, and the quality of our product and package experiences for consumers. It's not rocket science, it's really pretty much just common sense. And we also realize that our individual actions, they're good for P&G and they're good for the industry. If we all do our part, we all benefit and all boats rise. And best of all, consumers benefit. In fact, driving media transparency should not be optional. It's a responsibility. So to that end today, I'm going to share the action steps that P&G is taking to clean up the media supply chain during 2017, provided openly for any and all in the industry to apply to your business. Action 1, adopt one viewability standard. Now, what's viewability? Viewability means the opportunity to see an ad. It doesn't mean that it worked or that it was good or anything. It was the opportunity to see the ad. Did it make it onto the screen where human eyes can see it? Having a common standard for digital ads is foundational, because until we adopt one standard, we can't conduct business transparently and comparatively across digital platforms. Think about the Nielsen TV rating systems for TV that we're all accustomed to. Is it perfect? No. But since 1950, we've all accepted a shared level of error so we can conduct business together across all TV platforms. We've had the equivalent for digital media since 2010, the Media Ratings Council, or MRC, viewability standard. Experts from the industry, all of us, marketers, agencies, publishers, several others, spent several years, hundreds of interviews, tens and thousands of hours, and studies, and $6 million to test and verify the validity of these standards 6 years ago. Is it adopted broadly yet? No. Because every time a new technology gets developed, the case is made that my platform is different and special, or my product needs a unique viewability metric, or my agency has a better standard for our incredibly unique clients. That means every publisher needs to measure different viewability approaches for dozens of platforms, agencies, and clients. That's complexity, time, and money that we're all paying for. In fact, at P&G, we spend enormous amounts of time trying to understand, analyze, and explain the differences between Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Pinterest, Pandora, YouTube, you name it, and the dozens of different viewability metrics claimed to be the right metric for each platform. I mean, just think about that for a moment. It would be kind of like each NFL team having a different standard of yards needed for a first down. For the Packers, it's 6 yards. The Steelers want 5. For the Patriots, it's 3 yards, except for the playoffs, it's 2 yards, and in the Super Bowl, it's only a half a yard. Ridiculous? Of course it is. How could we possibly have a different first down standard for each NFL team? How would we know who's playing better during each game? How could we possibly compare statistics across teams? And God forbid, think of the complexity of our fantasy football leagues. What a nightmare. But that's precisely what we're doing in the digital media world with different viewability standards. Now, there may be some legitimate differences and some legitimate reasons for wanting differences, but really? I mean, the human mind can register an image into memory in 0.25 seconds. Regardless, it doesn't matter enough to warrant the complexity and the tremendous resources spent to deal with the differences. We'd rather spend time working on better advertising than debating the viewability standard with another publisher or agency. So at P&G, we've decided to accept one MRC validated viewability standard. We know it's the minimum standard, but we're accepting a shared level of error in order to conduct business on a level playing field across digital platforms and publishers. We expect all of our agencies, media suppliers, and platforms to adopt the standard during 2017. Time is up. We will no longer tolerate the ridiculous complexity of different viewability standards. Thank you. Action 2, implement accredited third-party measurement verification. Having one common viewability standard is a prerequisite for another critical capability required to do business on a level playing field, accredited third-party measurement verification. I mean, we make decisions involving billions of dollars on where to invest our media money. These are big bets, so we need objective, validated measurement to be sure that we're getting the viewability, the audience, the reach, and the frequency that we pay for. And regardless of how much we trust and respect the people from whom we buy media, we need an objective, impartial judge to perform the measurement. Again, we have this for TV, but not broadly in place for digital, despite the fact that Nielsen, Moat, and several others have the capabilities. Instead, we have too many who are self-reporting. And incredibly, we as clients are still tolerating it, accepting excuses like, we have a walled garden, or our technology won't allow it. I mean, to put this ridiculousness into perspective, let's go back to the commonly known idiom that we all learned in 2nd grade. Don't let the fox guard the henhouse. It was a lesson in common sense. And to be sure that it was applicable in today's world of millennials, I looked it up in the Urban Dictionary, which said, it's a bad idea putting someone in charge of a job when they have a conflict of interest. Back to our football analogy. It would be kind of like having a game with no referees. Go ahead, Tom, you tell us when you get a first down, whatever you say, bro. What finally put me over the edge was a conversation with a top executive from one of the major companies. After a long discussion, the executive said, look, I know you want us to get to a third-party verification from an accredited source, but you should know that there are many companies, including your competitors, who are leaning forward and spending billions with us without that measurement. At that moment, the image of my dear old dad popped in my head saying, if all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? I had a moment of clarity, and I replied, well, look, hundreds of millions of dollars may not seem like a lot to you, but it's a lot to us. We've been leaning forward for the past several years, and it's going to stop unless you get validated, accredited third-party measurement verification. So at P&G, we're expecting every media supplier, including publishers and measurement vendors, to adopt MRC accredited third-party measurement verification during 2017. It's taking some work, including technology investments, especially since there are some very real and some very legitimate data privacy issues which need to be addressed by some of our partners. That's why we've given an ample grace period. But frankly, we've been more than patient because we made these requests nearly a year ago. So after several months, the gig is up. Action 3, get transparent agency contracts. The controversy on undisclosed rebates in media funds used as principal to make money on the float is now very well known. Of course, media agencies are vigorously defending their innocence of any wrongdoing, pointing, appropriately in many cases, to their contracts. What's surprising is that this situation is surprising. As clients, what would we expect with the complexity and confusion in the media supply chain? Outdated contracts, and oh yeah, fee reductions. We as clients need to accept some responsibility for this. I mean, here's a story to illustrate. Not long ago, we discovered that one of our agencies was using media money as float. We were incensed. They're supposed to be an agent. How could they use this money as principal? So we went to our contract and we made an interesting discovery. Our contract stipulates that we pay the agency money for media that we want purchased, and they're responsible for making that purchase. They accept all liability to the publishers from which they purchase the media, thereby acting as a principal. There is no provision preventing them from making money on the float. Our response was somewhat humbling. Oh, I didn't realize that. The agency was acting 100% in compliance with the contract. If we wanted something different, we either needed to change the agency or change the contract. So, we are now poring over every agency contract for full transparency by the end of 2017. That's our responsibility. We're doing so to include terms requiring funds to be used for media payment only, all rebates to be disclosed and returned, and all transactions subject to audit. We've had some surprises. It is taking some time to complete, and we're often using outside counsel to help. But this step is necessary to strengthen governance and, more importantly, to strengthen partnerships with all of our agencies, new or existing, and it's worth the time. At the same time, we're closely examining our fee structure to make sure that we're paying appropriately for all of the services rendered. When we asked why the agency used the money for float, they said, "Your fee doesn't cover our expenses." Another humbling moment. Oh, I didn't realize that. Having unprofitable agencies is not good business and can lead to practices that we don't want. So we're taking a closer look at matching fees for services to create joint value with our partners. Action 4, prevent ad fraud. Despite the fact that the IAB tried to publicly address online ad fraud as early as 2012, when the ANA brought in White Ops in 2014 to prove that 10 to 20% of all digital media is subject to bot fraud, we were all shocked. How can this be so rampant? Well, criminals prey on big money, especially in inefficient, non-transparent systems with many touches, low or no accountability, and poor measurement. Digital media is the perfect place to hunt, and the fraudsters are getting rich and getting more sophisticated every year. Now, we thought we could handle this situation ourselves at P&G, but when we did an audit with experts from White Ops, we found that we're not good enough. The criminals are far better at this than we will ever be. Besides, our core competency is making shampoo, toothpaste, diapers, and laundry detergent for consumers around the world, not preventing digital ad fraud. So at P&G, we decided this is an area for outside experts who have a much higher probability and capability of staying ahead of the criminals than we ever will. We're getting help from the Trustworthy Accountability Group, or TAG, a joint initiative of the ANA, the 4As, and the IAB. This is a powerful self-regulatory body aimed at eliminating fraudulent advertising and its partners in crime, such as sites that steal copyrighted content from our supply chain. We're insisting that any entity that touches digital media must get TAG certified during 2017 to help ensure that they're free from fraud. So there you have it. P&G's action plan for transparent media for all of you to apply, if you wish. 1, MRC validated viewability standard. MRC accredited third-party measurement verification. Transparent agency contracts, and TAG certified ad fraud prevention. But you may be asking the same question that we did. we work with hundreds, even thousands of suppliers, agencies, and publishers. How do we get them to act? The answer to that question led to action step number 5, vote with our dollars. We've made it clear to our agencies, publishers, suppliers, and ad tech companies that these are the steps we expect each of them to take and comply with to get to a transparent, clean, and productive media supply chain. We've given them plenty of notice, more than a full year for many, so they have the time to get their systems in place, recognizing that some technology retrofitting may be required. And the consequences are crystal clear if they don't take these steps. We will work with and buy media only from those entities that comply. So we know that the ads that we create are experienced by the consumers we serve in the most productive way. That's because we don't want to waste time and money on a crappy media supply chain. Instead, we want to invest in raising the bar on the creative craft to drive growth on our brands. Better advertising that drives growth, enabled by media transparency that drives a clean and productive media supply chain. P&G is taking action because it's good for consumers, it's good for our business, and it's responsible for the industry. Please join us. Your participation is essential, every single one of us. Don't be fooled by the myths. Don't accept the excuses. Don't wait for someone else to move. Don't be daunted by the task. Take one step at a time. There is tremendous power in the collective force of our industry. Let's make the commitment now to come together and use that force for growth and for good. Thank you. Randall?
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
Thank you. This is really important. Let me ask you a couple questions. We have a couple minutes left. I guess the first thing I'm thinking about is, have you told your agencies about this?
Yes.
And how have they reacted? Say the viewability one, which has created some difficulties for publishers.
Yeah, this is, agencies work with us. They're partners. They know that this is something that we expect, that this is something that we can do. They understand the logic of that. So agencies, publishers, suppliers, they all understand it. We've had some pushback in some cases, but we said, okay, we've had enough debate. It's time to move.
Has any of the pushback on any of these issues giving you second thoughts or made you think, oh, maybe this really is too complicated and we need to kind of rethink it?
Not so much second thoughts, it has sharpened our thinking. Mm-hmm. The viewability discussion has been a very interesting one because I think admittedly I wasn't sure I understood it at first. And the key was, and actually you helped me with this, Randall, which is viewability was just opportunity to see the ad. It's not about the transaction aspect of it or the value aspect. We can get to that, but it's just let's start with the viewability. So that was one piece.
Yeah.
The third-party measurement verification, there were some very real technology issues that people had to get to, and I hadn't thought about that until I realized, the digital advertising world is still fairly young. And we have it, we've had TV since the 1950s, so digital advertising has really been the last several years. So a lot of the technology had to be either retrofitted or redone. So I understand that and had some patience with that, but it's time now.
Let me ask you something I actually haven't asked you before. So this will come. Yeah, this is. But one of the biggest changes that's taken place in our career span is. The agency business used to be relatively simple. You had one agency that created the ads, bought the media for them, assured their effectiveness, and then moved on. And of course, that's all changed dramatically. So you have media agencies, you have creative agencies, you have publishers that are doing creative on their own, you have publishers that are doing creative that is heavily influenced by technology companies. As a company that depends on creativity, that depends on ideas executed that reshape behaviors, how do you get your arms around the complexity of the creative ecosystem?
Well, it's one of the things that we have done over the course of the last several years. You may have seen what we've stated publicly is we've actually consolidated the number of agencies. We found that what happened is we had a proliferation, an exceedingly long tail that created so many touches that actually hurt the quality. So we've consolidated fewer agencies, and we've actually expected them to raise their game and be good at not just one type of creative. So that's the way we do that, is just get focused on the best capability. We still have some outsourcing that we need to do, and that's okay. But really, it's about just focusing and getting the right people to be able to do the work, and actually fewer. Less is more. This is part of the issue, I believe, with the entire digital ecosystems. There's so much in some cases. That's part of the thing that's kind of gumming up the works. And we need to, I think, simplify, get as many touches out of the system so we can get the absolute best creativity with the most productivity.
One last question. You use a lot of outside suppliers, and you mentioned here, including outside suppliers for a lot of technical work, fraud, for example, fraud prevention. What have you done in terms of getting expertise in your own company to make sure that in your marketing department you have the ability to manage the outside suppliers with the expertise that you need?
Well, a couple things. Number one, constant connections externally, constant. I mean, just engagement all the time so we can get the right brain power and capability in. And, in some cases, hiring people from the outside. P&G is well known for the build from within from the very, very beginning. And over the course of the last couple of years, that's changed, where we've actually brought people in from the outside.
So a big culture change in the company.
Big culture shift. People with a high degree of capability who have a lot of experience as well. But you know what's interesting? People really welcome it. Because what they see is that, oh, this is somebody from the outside who has experience that I don't have. If I listen to that, I know that I can make things happen a lot more quickly.
Interesting. Mark, this is a really important speech, really important presentation. Really valued your being here. Thank you for your message to
You're
our
welcome.
industry.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.